Here's the truth. It's not always the big things in your ERAS residency application that can cost you interview. Sometimes it's the small, tiny details, the small but mighty things that you don't know that program directors take notice of. Program directors are watching. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 small but mighty details that are important in your ERAS. The idea is to have you not ignore these things because even tiny details can cost you interview. The good news is these things are very minute. You can literally fix them tonight, and fixing them will help you stand out and definitely help you get more interviews and hopefully matching into your dream program. Now let's get to it. The first and most definitely misunderstood is the signaling. And the reason why I had to start with this because I see this every single time. Residency applicants do not understand what signaling is. Let's break that down. Signaling, it's a feature in ERAS that helps applicants indicate to programs that they have strong interest. And it depends on your specialty. It varies. There are different types of signal. There's gold, there's silver, there's bronze, depending. And also it varies from specialty to specialty. Some have 15, some have 20. It just depends. But generally, gold is the strongest interest. Silver has moderate interest and bronze has a good interest. Now, regardless of what type of signaling that you are going to apply, data shows that you are 3 times more likely to get interviews from the programs that you signal. So this is a huge opportunity for IMGs. The problem here is that many people do not understand what it means to signal. They don't understand the logic of signaling. And we have to exhaustively talk about this now. And the reason why we have to talk about this is because most candidates, most applicants get less than 10% of interviews. So for example, if they apply to 100 programs, they usually get somewhere around 10 or less than 10 interviews. It therefore means when you are signaling, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. And I'm going to walk you through those things right now. Now, before we go into this, I just want to let you know how generally the average applicant goes about looking for their programs. The first thing they do is they go to frida.com and they look for programs that sponsor visa or not visa. And then they look for number of IMGs. Some people use 50%, some people use 60%, are able to adjust the percentage of IMGs in the program. And then they just send out applications to all those programs. There is a problem with this approach. Not all programs are created equal. Even if a program is 100% IMG, doesn't necessarily mean that that program is your kind of IMG. For example, if a program has never matched somebody from Pakistan or somebody from Nigeria, but they keep matching IMGs from other countries, there's a very low chance that they are going to match you. So signaling that kind of program doesn't help you. What I need you to understand is that programs are very sentimental about the country of origin that their residents or fellows come from. So if you have somebody who has matched in a program for the past 3 years in that program, your chances of matching that program is exponentially high. If that is not the case, then it is very low. Not impossible, but super low. I know a couple of applicants who had applied the year before and didn't match. One of the problems that I thought they had was misplaced signaling. Now, they got some decent amount of interviews, but they didn't match. And the reason for that is they had signal programs that even though they got interviews from, they weren't a fit from the get-go. So these programs are very IMG friendly, but they don't fit in terms of culture, in terms of previous residents that they've matched in the past. So there was a misalignment of the kind of previous residents that that program had. So you have to take that into account. It's very important. IMGs understand that not all IMG friendly programs are the same. They are completely not the same at all. If all IMG programs were the same, then all IMG friendly programs will invite all IMGs to interview, right? But this is not the case. Now, I guess the question is, what is the best way to find programs that gives you the highest likelihood of interviews? Number 1, you go to Frida, you select your criteria in Frida, and then you look at the percentage of IMGs in that program. That gives you a good starting point. The next point is to look at the residents in each program and say, which of these programs has the highest number of people from my country or people from my school where I graduated from in the last 3 years? Let me use Nigeria, for example. I'm a Nigerian, right? So I look at the programs and I said, okay, I have 100 programs here. Out of these 100 programs, which of them have the highest number of Nigerians or the highest number of people that graduated from my medical school in the last 3 years? If I am able to find those programs, then I can now put those programs in a separate basket. And then that is step 1. I have been able to separate programs according to my country or school. The next step is to go through these 20 or 50 programs and tie them back to your score, your year of graduation. And most importantly, do you know anybody in those programs? If you know somebody that can advocate for you, that can talk to the program director and reflect your strengths to the program director or coordinator, then your chances of interviewing them is extremely high, as long as you meet their basic criteria, right? So now that you've found all the IMG friendly programs, you've extracted the programs that are more friendly with people from your country or from your school. The next step is to match those programs according to your own profile, and then find programs that you have that you somebody there. And after this, you will now decide what program is going to get gold signal, what program is going to get silver signal, and what program is going to get bronze signal. That is how I want you to approach it. I want you to understand that if you have 10 or 20 signals, you should treat your signaling as if those programs are the only programs you're going to apply to, with so much attention to detail. Because when you signal right, then you do not need more than that. If you signal 25 programs and you get 7 17 interviews, you are done. You've matched. So the idea is to spend so much time signaling. Don't randomly signal programs just because they're IMG friendly. Do not do that. But even if your signals are perfect, another problem that you might face is issues with your MSPE. And what is MSPE? MSPE is just another word for the Dean's letter. That's basically a letter that's given to you from your medical school and attests your completion of training and your characteristics that you had during training. Now, most of us don't see our MSPE. Now, we hope that our MSPE is fantastic, but we don't truly see the content of the MSPE. And for those of us who see the content of our MSPE, we don't necessarily treat it with so much weight just because we don't have control over our MSPE. The MSPE is actually a very important part of your application. And some program directors read your MSPE side by side with your ERAS application. So one thing you don't want to do is have inconsistencies in your MSPE versus your application, because the program directors actually trust your MSPE versus your ERAS application, because your MSPE was written by someone else, right, on behalf of you, or your application was written by you. So your MSPE will give the program director an unbiased edition of who you are. And the data from the NRMP says that program directors rank the MSPE among the top 5 things that they use in selecting candidates for interviews and matching. So you have to be able to treat your MSPE as part of your application. And how do you do that? First of all, you want to reflect your MSPE. You don't want to have inaccuracies, right? And I think the most important part of the MSPE is just consistency in terms of awards that you won when you're in medical school and your percentile in class. If you were 90th percentile in class, or your MSPE says you were something else, then there's discrepancies. So you want to reflect the accurate things that are in your application with the things that are in your MSPE. You don't want to make them conflict. How I think you can do that is when you approach your school for MSPE, you want to write and have them know your percentile, your scores, your leadership roles when you're in medical school. The chances are they probably do not have most of it on file. So you want to make sure you take control of the narrative and have them know that this is the specific award that you won, this is the specific club that you were part of, this is the specific leadership role that you did off the bat. You don't want to be chasing them to make a correction when they've already done the MSPE. So try and make sure that your MSPE is consistent with your application. And for those of you who have access to your MSPE, at least have a rough draft of MSPE, you want to also cross-check your MSPE with your CV to make sure that those inconsistencies are not there. And now everything looks good. You've handled your signaling, you've handled your MSPE, but the next thing you have to handle is very important. And even if it's not necessarily treated as such, it is extremely important. And what is this? This is your ERAS headshot, ERAS photo. This is very important. Think about your ERAS photo as the advocate, your very own image that is standing before the program director, coordinator, and every other person that's going to make a decision about you matching that program. You see, first impressions are very important. First impressions, they carry huge weight. If I take up your CV and I look at your picture, I can get tons of ideas in my head just by looking at your picture. I can tell a lot about you. I can tell about, are you a serious person? Are you a smiley person? Are you... Now, I'm definitely wrong. I'm definitely not correct by making those assumptions, but it is my assumptions nonetheless. And my assumptions may influence my decision to rank you or even invite you. So you want to give a sharp, professional ERAS photo. If your ERAS photo looks like your driver's license, that is completely wrong. And what you also need to understand is that when the time comes to rank you, the program director, the coordinator, and every other person on the selection committee, they pull up your headshots and they compare you side by side with your co-applicants, and they say applicant A versus applicant B, who do we choose? And just by the sheer look that you have on your face, your ERAS photo, that can seal your fate. You have to take a picture. You are smiling, yet you are professional. You want to give up the vibe of a jolly good fellow. You want people to feel, oh, he looks really, people make those assumptions, and if you think they don't, even if you think that your score matters, actually it doesn't. What matters is how people perceive your picture. Professional, smiley, warm, and that is what you have to do on your picture. You don't need an expensive camera. You don't need an expensive headshot. You don't need that. If you're using an iPhone, you definitely can use that iPhone. If you're using a high-grade Samsung, you definitely can. If you're not comfortable using your phone, you can definitely go to places where they offer these services and take headshots that are clear, that are professional, that have a very decent background. There is nothing that can replace that first impression like your ERAS photo. Nothing. Of course, you want to wear a professional attire. Now, I don't have the specific settings for ERAS headshot. What you should do is go to the ERAS website, look for the specific settings that they ask for, and then simply turn your iPhone setting to that setting and take your headshot. Or go to a photographer, have them know the settings, and then take the headshot. It has to be a professional headshot. First impressions. Honestly, if you have a 260 but your photo is terrible, you won't get interviews. You won't get interviews because nobody cares about someone who's high scorer but doesn't know etiquettes. So nobody cares about that kind of person. So focus on the small things. Now you've done your signaling. You've been able to get your MSPE in check and consistent. You've also gotten fantastic ERAS photo. The next thing that you have to address, small but mighty thing, is your communication with programs. Now what does this mean? Now, a few of us will send letter of intent. You are sending that email to the program even before application season starts. You have to understand that a letter of intent is a double-edged sword. It can cut you, but it can also be the thing that opens the door for you. You have to be mindful of this thing in several ways. One, when you send that email, you have to be, of course, generally, you have to send an email with good grammatical construction. You have to be very professional in that email, right? That is a no-brainer. So good grammar, very professional in your email. Also, you need to understand that programs have a cycle, right? Residents march in March, and then they resume in June, July, and then residents are kind of shaky until sometime in December. So from July through September, October, it's a busy period for the program, right? So when you send your emails, you have to understand that anybody opening your email is doing you a favor, right? So you have to be very respectful of their time, and you have to note that in the email. You have to be professional because they are taking their time to read your email and even respond to you. So it's not a right. You have to come off in your email as knowing that they are busy, because they truly are. The other aspect is that your emails are actually like mini interviews. So when the program coordinator takes up her phone or her email, her computer, and looks at it and says, and you send an email, your tone, the way you sound, your grammatical construction, she kind of can tell, does this person have attention to detail? Is this person coming off rude? Is this someone that's professional? They can tell. So you have to treat your emails as a mini interview. Now, I personally do not advocate letter of intent. I don't do it. I've never done it. But a few people do it. In my experience, it doesn't change anything, but it's up in the air. I'm not an expert in that area. But in those communications that you be sure to treat them with so much respect and urgency. Now, another thing you have to know is when you begin to get communication from programs, you also have to maintain the same etiquette. You have to be very professional. That's what they call email etiquette. You have to respond to the email as if the person were standing in front of you. But it's a very subtle thing, and it doesn't sound like it's important, but it's super important. Now, we've done all these things. We've done the signaling. We've done our MSPE. We've gotten our fantastic headshot. They're communicating with the program coordinator very professionally. The last thing we have to do, small but mighty thing, that is super, extremely important, the icing on the cake. You have to bear in mind that right now, as you're putting together your application, because you want to be able to have in your mind that you can incorporate your story into your interview, what you should do is start thinking about the background of your interview. Now, right now, our interviews are still virtual. And so one of the first things your interview notice will be the background, where you're going to sit and talk with them via your camera, right? Sometimes the first questions you get will be about the things you put in the background of your Zoom interview meeting. So you should be very selective. Don't just put anything random. No, try to be creative. And if you can, let the things that are in your background resonate with your personal statement, or something that you resonate with deeply, something that you like deeply, because it will come up. I personally had two frames that I put in my background, and it was about African culture, and it kept coming up every single time. If I like that art, tell me about that art. Or if you put like a guitar in the background, definitely they're gonna ask you about your guitar, right? They're gonna ask you, do you play a guitar? Are you in a band? It's gonna come up. So as you're writing your personal statement, you're writing your CV, think about what you can represent in the background in your interview, and try and look for those things and get them or buy them and then put them in your background. And then when you are interviewing, you will have those questions and you'll be able to talk about them, and it'll make you more relaxed. You'll be able to talk better during your interviews, and you probably get more connections with some of the people interviewing you, and you probably get ranked higher. So that's the idea. You want to be able to control the environment as much as you can to be able to optimize your chances of getting interviewed, getting noticed, standing out, and getting ranked and matched. Now, after doing all these 5 things, one thing I have to emphasize is that you need to make sure that your social media presence is exclusively professional. I've seen a couple of people who go on Instagram or go on LinkedIn especially, and they make some rants about the match process. And granted, the match process is not fair. It's a very unfair process. It can be very heartbreaking and disheartening. That is true. But you want to try and keep your emotions out of social media. And the reason for this is that we are professionals, we're physicians, right? And there's some expectations that we have. Now, you might disagree with that expectations, and it's fine. That is your opinion. But the point is that because your need to get matched is more important and surpasses your 5-minute rant, you want to put your need to match above your emotions. So everybody, go to your social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn especially, and make sure that your conversations, your posts are exclusively professional. You want to stay away from political issues. You want to stay away from other issues that might not necessarily represent who you are in terms of from a professional standpoint. Now, when you match, you might do whatever you want, but before you match, do not do whatever you want. Do not do that. Okay, that's it for this episode. I'm currently opening a waiting list for interview practice. If you're interested in mock interviews, click on the link below and join the waiting list. We're going to be practicing interviews and simulating real-world questions. Good luck with the match, and as usual, I'll see you in the next one.